Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Hao Huang, Associate Professor of Social Sciences, and welcome to Illinois Tech Social Sciences Great Problems, Great Minds Seminar Series. For today's seminar, we will open the floor to questions at the end after the talk. Today's speaker, Dr. Xiaochu Hu, a research manager of workforce studies at the Association of American Medical Colleges, and serves as the chair of the Health Workforce Interest Group Advisory Committee of the Academia Health. Her research areas include health workforce migration and public health. She has published scholarly articles on these areas in top journals such as Yama Network Open and the Russell Surgery Foundation Journal of Social Sciences and the Journal of Women's Health. Her research has been funded by the National Institute of Food and Agriculture at the U.S. Department of Agriculture. She taught at the University of the District of Columbia as a land grant faculty. She received the American Economic Association Committee on Status of Women in the Economics Profession Fellowship in 2013, and the Philip M. Gilbert Fellowship of the Economic Club of Washington, D.C. in 2012. She holds a PhD in public policy from George Mason University and master degree in applied geography from the University of North Carolina at Greensboro, and also a master master degree in public administration from Beijing Normal University, and a bachelor degree in computer science from Beijing Language and Cultural University. It's glad to welcome Dr. Xiaochu Hu.
Thank you, Hal, for that introduction. It's very detailed. I am very happy to be here. I am a research manager at the American Association of American Medical Colleges Workforce Studies. So we study physician workforce in the U.S. I'm very happy to be here today and speak on this topic of gender inequality, which is one of the research areas of mine and also very dear and near to my heart. And I am, since we don't have a big audience, if you have any question for clarification, just stop me, feel free to stop me in any time. All right, so I have an outline for today's talk. So I will draw on my own studies as well as other people's studies on this topic to discuss the distinctive factors contributing to the gender pay gaps in the physician workforce. I will also go through the challenges posed by the COVID-19 pandemic and share the most recent developments in the data collection at the AAMC workforce studies. In the end, I will also look into potential strategies to bridge the gender gap that persists in the physician workforce. I also need to mention that everything I'm presenting today is my own views and does not represent my organizations. All right, the first part of my talk is because I know that many of you are not super familiar with the physician workforce. I want to start with a higher level overview of the physician occupation. To become a physician in the US, one needs to have a BS and plus a medical degree, which takes about 4 years in general. Then medical graduates will match into a specialty and undergo residency training. Depending on the specialty of choice, this residency will take 3 to 9 years, and some subspecialties also include additional fellowship. So you can see that to become a physician needs a lot of a very heavy investment in human capital. Physicians are paid relatively well in comparison with other occupations. The US Bureau of Labor Statistics shows that this is the top 20 highest paid occupation in the year 2023. And I think 18 out of this top 20 are different specialties of physicians. With the top 11, this wage is right censored. So the real annual median income is likely higher than this number. And let me know if you want a little more time on any of the slides. All right, so physicians also work a lot. So in the 80s, an average physician worked about 56 hours a week, and full-time physicians worked nearly 60 hours a week. These numbers have been declining over time, but it is still way above the US average, national average for all occupations, which is for full-time employers, that's 36, and all included, that's less than 35 hours. All right, so they work a lot, they're paid well, and they need a lot of training and education up front.
Could I ask on that previous slide, what is to what do you attribute the drop in hours over time?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it's in general, it's we see this decline in work hour across occupations. So if you look at the lawyers and some of the traditionally occupations that work demands a lot of work hours, those are all showing the same trend, and that's mostly due to increasing awareness of work-life balance, I would say.
Thank you.
Thanks. So in terms of the gender composition in the physician workforce in the US, so more and more physicians are women, but of course they are still a minority in the workforce. So let's see. Medicine has been historically a heavily male-dominated field, but women continue to gain weight to make gains. So now they're making up about 38% of the whole active physician workforce. In addition, women has been the majority of the medical school applicants, matriculants, and total enrollment. So we expect that women's representation in the workforce will continue to rise. All right, so that all sounds good. What is the big problem here? Where does the physician workforce stand in terms of the gender income gap? I think I should have you throw out some guesses. To give you some context, here's a list of jobs with the largest and the smallest gender pay gap of this year. I hope you can read it clearly. The fonts are a little small because I'm trying to jam everything in one slide. So you can see, for example, men real estate brokers make 60% more than their women counterparts. And that's the largest, that's the occupation with the largest pay gap, gender pay gap. And in contrast, men physical therapists makes only 2% more than their female counterparts. So although someone would say 2% is still big enough, after all, there is no occupation listed here with women earning more than men. But I believe this list is just comparing the annual median income, but not adjusting for their work hours. Now let's see where physicians are. The gender disparities in physician earnings have been well documented. According to a study published in JAMA Internal Medicine, physicians' gender pay gap was about 25% in the year 2010. And this is already adjusting for age, race, work hours, and state fixed effects. So I think that is pretty shocking or pretty astonishing after adjusting for all those. So women begin with lower pay, and the gap gets even larger over time. Here's a study on the left side. That's a study published on Health Affairs about 10 years ago, 12 years ago. It's documenting a gap over $16,000 between men and women physicians who just enter the job market. And this study also adjusted for all the things that we can control for in the previous studies, such as age and race, and where their location is, plus medical specialty. And that is why they're calling this gap unexplained. That means they couldn't find, after adjusting for all those factors, they're still finding such a big gap. And another study that is more recent, that's the screenshot is on the right. That study is taking that gap between genders and then projected on a simulated 40 years career. So that is claiming that women physician earns 2 million less than their male counterparts in their whole career. So this is a shocking graph from that later article, illustrating how the annual income differences between men and women physicians change in the simulated career. So you can see that they started already with a gap, and then the gap will get larger very quickly during the initial practice years. After about 10 years of practice into their practice, the gap stabilized a little bit, but it will never recover. So income is not the only labor market outcome that men and women differ. Women physicians also have a higher risk of dropping off from the labor market. This is a data snapshot from the AAMC's National Sample Survey of Physicians, which we collected in 2022. When we asked a physician to reflect on their entire career, we found that about 1 in 5 have reported that they had temporarily reduced their clinical hours to part-time for at least 6 months, while 6% has paused their practice completely for more than 6 months. Upon analyzing by gender, women physicians are not only express a greater inclination to leave medicine, and they also have a significant higher rate of actual leaving the field, exceeding that of men counterparts by over 2-fold. And I also want to mention that in order to be captured in this survey, these people have already returned to the workforce, which I'll say this data is an underestimates of the rates of leaving medicine. And considering how much human capital investment upfront, this attrition is very shocking, financially wasteful, and it's a big deal for individuals too. Okay, with that in mind, we have seen some of the great problems, and we constantly search for the root causes. To give you a preview, the physician workforce suffers from some of the common reasons that cause gender pay gap in many other occupations, but some of these patterns are unique to the physician workforce. And let's see some of them. So the first possible explanation for the gender pay gap, is the gender segregation in specialties. So here are 2 tables with the top 5 specialties with the most women representation and the least women's representation. And if you are familiar with the medical specialties, you would have guessed that there might be a relationship between women's representation at the specialty and the average pay in that specialty. So this is a very interesting illustration of this relationship. As you probably will already guessed, the highly male-dominated specialties tend to be also highly paid. To see this pattern visually is shocking. And this is the figure from a published article in academic medicine called "When a Specialty Becomes Women's Work." In the broader literature of labor economics, the gender earning gap can be at least explained by 2 opposite theories. One is called the sorting, and the other is called the devaluation or the pollution theory. So sorting refers to an occupational segregation, the idea that men and women are self-selecting into different occupations, and these occupations pay differently. An example would be men professors and women teaching in elementary schools, or women nurses versus men physicians. And the other theory is that the entry of women into an occupation may pollute or devaluate the status of these occupations, and therefore reduce their average pay over time, because the job is now seen as easier. Under this theory, men in occupation would defer would deter the entry of women in order to protect the perceived occupational prestige and avoid their own earnings going down. We will return to this point when we talk about potential strategies to narrow the gender gap. But in the physician workforce, in terms of different specialties, both effects could be at work. In fact, I have a working paper that uses longitudinal data and looked at this question. We found that increasing women's representation in a physician work environment impact men and women physicians' income differently. So for women physicians, the increase of the share of women in their specialty leads to a higher annual income, more patient volume, and also a higher per patient income. This is for women physicians. But these effects are reversed for men. So changing in women's share at the practice level also have a similar effect on women, and this effect is the same in the different direction for men. So this finding confirmed that increasing women's representation will benefit women physicians in terms of their pay and will help narrow the gender gap. The second potential explanation for the gender pay gap is that the gender difference in time used at work or their practice patterns in general. Some studies found that within specialties, women physicians spend longer time per patient or see less lucrative patients or use less lucrative approaches, such as non-procedure oriented approaches. This figure you see here shows that physician level distribution of dollars earned per minute during patient visits among men and women primary care physicians at PCP. The conclusion is that women PCPs generated less visit and revenue than their male colleagues in the same practices due to a lower volume of visits, yet spend more time in direct care per visit, per day and per year. The next explanation I want to explore is the labor market discrimination and the adverse work environment. This can be one of the deterring factor and keep women out of work or reduce their work hours, a series of negative effects. So we started with the hypothesis that a physician will experience more harassment from colleagues and patients when their stereotyped gender role is at odds with their work role. For example, a man pediatrician and a woman surgeon. And in this analysis, you see, we used the AAMC's National Sample Survey of Physician data, which captures personal level of self-reported workplace harassment. And the graph is made using the post-regression estimates. So the x-axis is the women's share in the specialty, and the y-axis is the probability of receiving offensive sexist remark from their colleagues. We found that physicians in specialties with higher women's representation experience less harassment, and this relationship holds for both men and women physicians. In other words, we found evidence that women surgeons experience more harassment, but for a man pediatrician, not so much. So more women, means a more friendly work environment in general. In addition, the harassment reducing effect is larger for women So that's why you see the slope for women is deeper. And on the far left are the highly male-dominated specialties. And here we observe a very large gender disparity in receiving harassment. And women receive a lot more than men. As we move to the right side, we see the gap narrows. So this also points to a positive externality and confirms or supports the efforts in increasing women's representation across specialties. Gender differences in patient referral patterns can also contribute to the gender pay gap. Here are two studies found that physicians refer more to specialists of their own gender. This is a so-called homophily in the practice pattern. So this points to so most referring doctors, because right now male physicians are still majority, and because of this pattern of referring to specialists of their own gender, this will have a negative impact on, will perpetuate the gender disparity in income. This conclusion also points to a positive externality for increased female participation in medicine. So for this for the last possible explanation for the gender disparity, I would like to turn our attention to the family formation and the motherhood penalty. While marriage and motherhood penalty are common causes for women to be disadvantaged in the labor market, what are the unique factors to physicians? So the first point I want to make is that the tendency for women to marry up in income and in education. Or you can say the tendency for men to marry down in income and in education. This non-random mating or marriage pattern is referred as the assortative mating or assortative marriage. So in other words, men and women continue to form partnership where the wife's socioeconomic status does not exceed their husband's. In fact, on average, compared to men physicians' spouse, women physicians' spouse have higher education, as you can see from this chart, and this is also from our survey data. They probably, so the women physician's spouse probably also have higher average income. Additionally, the husband is usually older than their wives, and this means that he is usually at a more advanced career stage compared to the wife. This all means that women physicians are more likely to be the secondary earners of their household. And when a couple face a collective family decision, it is very often the secondary earner will step down in labor supply, for example, cutting their hours or switching to a more flexible schedule position, or choose location to cater to the primary earner's job. So in sum, women's career suffers when the couple maximizes their combined income, because it is most economical for the less highly paid partner to reduce hours and so on. So let's look at, from the data, let's look at how women move women physicians moved to prioritize their spouse jobs. So in the sample national sample physician survey, we asked the physicians the main reason that they choose their current practice location. And you can see that women are far more likely to choose a location to cater to their spouse job, and men physicians are more likely to choose a location for better compensation. And again, these respondents of the survey themselves are all physicians. Motherhood penalty. Motherhood penalty for all occupations is no news. It was often reported that women prioritize career advancement by delaying starting a family. But the female doctors believe that their career progression would be slowed by their motherhood too. One thing I didn't mention is that as recently as 20 years ago, resident physicians routinely worked 19 to 100 hours per week, and for up to 36 consecutive hours without rest for their entire duration of residency training. A 2003 work hour regulation by the ACGME, which is the Accreditation Council for graduate medical education, implemented a rule limiting work hours for all residents to 80 hours per week. That's mainly for the safety for the patients, but also for the well-being of the residents. Remember, we talked about how many years residency trainings takes. Usually students graduate from medical school at the age of 26, followed by 3 to 9 years of residency training. Most doctors won't begin their career until well into their 30s. This age is also when most women bear children. However, maternity and family leave during residency has been very inconsistent. So this is and the programs often do not advertise such policies. Our survey data show that with looking back, 29% of physicians do not even know about their own programs has such policy, and 23% reported no family leave benefit during their residency. And even with their family leave policy in place, traditional notions about fathers as the breadwinners and mothers as the caregivers is deeply ingrained. We read stories in the news about both parents are taking parental leave, and the fathers use it to write more papers and get ahead. So family leave itself is far from enough to close the gender gap. So this chart is from a JAMA article showing how women physicians have made a variety of career alterations to cater to pregnancy and motherhood. Reduced hours and foregoing opportunities for career advancement are among the most common strategies. Decisions to delay childbearing are also very common in certain medical specialties, with financial considerations and colleague burdens weighing heavily in their process. Only a minority of residents who delay childbearing are satisfied with that decision. These findings suggest that greater attention is needed to promote policies and cultures that both anticipate and normalize parenthood in residency, and minimizing the conflict between biological and professional choices for female or women residents. Among this motherhood penalty and family formation, I also want to mention a very interesting and unique marriage pattern among physicians. They marry other physicians at a higher rate, at a very high rate. This is an interesting chart showing the rate of physicians marrying other physicians by age cohort. About 30% of female physicians in every age cohort marry other physicians, but that has been stable. About 20% of male physicians in their 30s marry other physicians, and older male physicians do not have a high rate of marrying other physicians simply because there weren't many women physicians back then. As the overall gender composition in the physician workforce gets more balanced, the sheer number of physician couples is going to increase. When both partners in the family have high demand careers, they need to face the reality of time constraints to raise a family, because even the richest couple cannot contract all of their caregiven responsibilities out. So one of our studies leveraged the AEMC physician survey and the publicly available American Community Survey data to show how women physicians how women in physician marriages work less per week than their counterparts who are married to non-physicians, while men in physician couples work almost the same hours compared to the counterparts who are married to non-physicians. This pattern also holds for income. So women in physician couples earn more than $5,000 less than their counterparts, while men in physician couples earn $6,600 more annually than their counterparts who are married to non-physicians. Again, the couple equity problem is tricky because it is natural and more efficient economically for a physician couple to maximize their collective income. So these physician couples especially face a choice between a marriage of equal career opportunities and a marriage with more money. Let's do a quick summary here of all the potential causes or explanations for the gender income inequality we observe. The list is definitely not exhaustive, and there are studies using clever methods, and the data keep seeking the root causes for the gender gap. I want to encourage you all to think about the profession you are in or about to enter, whether it is science or engineering or academia, law or business. Could you see some of these issues impact the gender gap in your field? How are we doing on time? Next, we'll spend some time discussing how COVID-19 pandemic played a role in this gender inequality. So previous economic recessions tend to affect men more than women. But many studies have shown that the recession resulting from COVID-19 has disproportionately hurt women's employment, partially because COVID shutdowns have closed schools and daycare facilities around the country, and keeping kids at home has been a major challenge for working mothers. When working from home, women are more disrupted than men. It is more often that women need to cut down their hours or change schedules to work around their family responsibility during the shutdown. And this reduction of productivity has already been observed in medical research field. As this graph shows, the research articles submitted by female lead authors plummeted during the first year of the pandemic. In one of the studies we published using the current population survey, we found that percentage of parents of preschool-aged children among full-time women physicians has declined, but this did not change significantly among men physicians, which means many physician mothers had to switch to part-time during this time. Compared to most other high-skilled occupations, due to the nature of providing care, physicians do not have the privilege of working from home during the pandemic time. In the National Sample Survey of Physicians we conducted in 2022, women physicians reported similar childcare burdens as men. So we can see of all parents with children under the age of 18, 59% of women and 57% of men physicians reported that their kids being home more than usual because of the COVID-19 shutdown and school closure. And when this happened, they also reported similar length of such experience, which is about 11 to 12 weeks. Although the caregiving responsibilities are similar between men and women physicians, their allocation of childcare responsibilities differ significantly. The biggest difference lies in how physicians and their partners divide the rest of the responsibility. So if we focus on self-to-partner division of labor, for men physicians, it's much more likely that their partners shouldered this burden. Well, women physicians pretty much equally divide this burden between themselves and their partners. So that's the orange bar and the blue bar. In other words, men physicians received a lot more help from their partners than women physicians to cover these COVID-induced childcare responsibilities. Women physicians also use both paid and unpaid childcare more often than their male colleagues. That is the gray and yellow bar. I would like to think of the sum of the blue and orange bars as the part of childcare that is relatively inelastic to increase of wage. Physicians are resourceful. Maybe it is when the kids are sick and the babysitter is not willing to come, or it is the last minute COVID or COVID notification from school that there is no time to get help. The pandemic has magnified these issues, and the part of gender inequality boils down to the couple equity. If you recall earlier, we see women physicians providing on-site childcare easier. It may not work. It may work to some extent, but unless we change the socially created gender differences and the gender expectations, it is hard to break through this spiral. When we look at the main, so COVID-19 not only takes time from women physicians that through child caregiving, it also takes a heavy toll on their mental well-being. When examined by gender, we found women express higher burnout than their male colleagues. When we look at the main source for physician burnout, women physicians selected more driving factors for burnout across the board. So you can see the gray bars are almost always higher, longer than the red bars. In trying to balance work and personal life, being reported as the with the biggest gender difference. Next, when we looked at the main sources of considering leaving medicine, attrition, we also found that family caregiving is the reason that has the biggest gender difference, with a lot more women choosing this as a main reason for considering leaving. So to summarize this this section, couple equity issue predated the pandemic. It has been likely made worse by the pandemic. COVID-19 likely hurt women physicians' career more than men, especially for those who are with young children and are in their earlier career. And this setback in early career can create an even larger ramification between men and women physicians and have therefore long-lasting negative impacts. And we also mentioned that COVID-19 opened up the remote working possibility for many office workers, which is great news for many women workers because it provides a solution for many couples' co-location problems. However, physicians are not likely to benefit from this flexibility. Now let's move on to the last section where we can look at what we can do to narrow this gender gap. I want to mention this. So work could be done in different levels. It could be done at the workplace level, at the training phase, and also from the individual and family level. So at the professional level, if you remember the list I showed you earlier in the first session, we do see some occupations that are fairly equal, such as the physical therapists. What are the other characteristics that a more egalitarian occupation have? They could have a smaller gender pay gap, a lower earning dispersion, and a high substitution among workers. It helps to picture the opposite of a egalitarian occupation, which Claudia Golden, who just won the Nobel Prize of Economics this year for studying women in the labor force, has called such occupation a greedy job. So a greedy job typically offers increasing returns to long and uncertain hours. Examples could include a lawyer or consultant. I think Golden used an example of a couple of young lawyers who attended the same law school, were equally brilliant, and found positions at the same law firm to start their careers. Once the children arrive, they realize that they both can't work the same crazy hours. So when the woman starts to cut hours, she is not given or assigned the most important clients. As for the husband, the more willing to work on weekends and at night, the more important clients he will be assigned to. The couple could both take a less demanding job, but as a unit, they will make less. One solution to this, as Golden points out, is to demand jobs to be less greedy. For example, employers can ban work overtime. This has a lot to do with the profession's culture, and it may not be realistic in the short run. Another solution to increase the substitutability among workers. Golden's study, this is probably 15 years ago, focused on pharmacy as one of the most egalitarian professions, primarily due to the high substitution among pharmacists. She claimed that the growth of pharmacy employment in retail chains and hospitals and the related decline of independent pharmacists reduced the penalty to part-time work and contributed to the narrowing gender earning gap. Today, patients may not have a strong preference for which pharmacist they see, but they do often prefer they have a preference for which physicians to see. With technological advancement and the trend of more and more physicians being employed by physician groups and systems, the substitution level among physicians have increased. So hopefully the physician occupation will become a little more egalitarian. So let's go back to Golden's lawyer couple example and assume that they are a couple of physicians who met during residency. And the man is a couple years older and is determined to go to a surgery specialty. This may become a deterring factor for the women to enter surgery, since the two are considering getting married, and she may therefore consider a specialty that has a better work-life balance. So this goes back to how this gender segregation among specialties has been perpetuated. And this is just one way of explaining that. Other factors could be a lack of women role model in the specialties that are male dominated, discrimination, bias, and gendered expectations from individual and society. Given the differences in average salary among specialties, to narrow the gender earning gap, it is crucial to make gender composition more balanced among specialties. Increasing gender balance, as we mentioned earlier, can also have a positive spillover effect through reducing harassment at workplace and smoothing patient referral patterns. Another effort at the medical education level that we can do is to implement and clarify parental leave policy. So beginning of July last year, the ACGME required all residency programs to offer 6 weeks of paid family leave to all residents and fellows for medical, parental, and caregiving leave. It sounds like a baby step, but this is just 1 year, as recent as 1 year ago. Last but not least, we should adjust each of our individual expectations and towards a more egalitarian couple. In this sense, studies about the labor division of the same-sex couple could offer some good examples. For example, one study found that male and female same-sex couples divide their hours of paid employment equally. And another study found that the transgender and gender non-binary parents reported dividing their household and child care labor in a more egalitarian fashion. And they wanted to divide their labor in that way. So let me conclude by quoting Golden's book, Career and Family, last year. Physicians, so the barrier is the time bind. Children require time, careers require time. And couple equity, a sharing of that time, could enable them to achieve both career and family. But couple equity is really expensive and is part of the reason for the continued gender earning gap. Physicians have high aspirations in both career and family, and they often have partners who equally do so. I also want to add to this that breaking the gender stereotype also benefits people who are not in a relationship or never intended to be a relationship because of the spillover of the gender stereotype to single people. So what does a egalitarian partnership look like to you? That concludes my talk today, and I'm happy to answer any questions and open for discussion. I hope I didn't send everybody to sleep.
Hi, I tuned in. I found out about this from I'm in design school, and this was for a building and understanding context class. And my group is focusing on disparities in medical education and medical care. And like my actual focus was people with disabilities, but I joined this to see if I could learn something. And I really did. And I'm sorry I didn't have my camera on. Hope you didn't I mean, this has been so interesting, and you did so much research, and thank you for sharing it with us, because it's fascinating, and I'm going to send it to my female physician friends as soon as it gets posted somewhere, because we really appreciate it. And it's not even like what I'm working on, but this is just great general knowledge. So thank you very much for sharing.
I'm very glad to hear that.
Thanks for our interesting talk. Now we open to the questions. Actually, I find it's very interesting for each sections. From the beginning, the first section is about the general trend for the pay gap. So I think you're showing is kind of the gender gap for each year. So how many year for each year, like how much the female actually earn less than men back to 2011. So I'm wondering what's the current trend, especially how actually in terms of per hour, since actually the woman earn less, there's not the reasons actually is work less time. So what's the current trend for this pay gap between female and men
Are you referring
in terms of per hour?
Are you referring to that gender gap projected on a lifetime, that chart?
Yeah, you have I think you have mentioned that there's a news is like the each year how many like the female actually pay less than the men. So
I think there's a so one of the studies I cited, there's a gap of 16,000 in the starting salary between men and women.
yes, so for that one, actually, it's I wonder because that's back to 2011. So I'm wondering what's the current trend. So and also since that starting, it's women earn less, meaning is as you just now give some like tables showing women actually is work less time. Less hours. So,
Okay.
so I wonder what's the current trend for the pay gap in terms of per hour.
Oh, I see. So that study was published a while ago, I believe. But that their study was using the New York residency data. I haven't heard they updated that study using more recent data, but I assume the gap is still there. You know, with inflation and everything else, I don't see that gap is closing in any significant way.
Oh, okay. So the other is for the what are the reasons that and the others and the next section is what are the reasons actually cause this gender gap. So one of them actually you mentioned it's several reasons. So I think for some is mentioned as the family formation. So there's a chart is showing the different education degree. So I'm wondering for that since I saw actually for professional and doctor.
Yeah, I know which one you're referring to.
Yeah, is that one?
One.
So so I wonder what's the last column actually is just combine the previous two columns or because it actually is for the last one is didn't finish it. So the last one, the last column, it's the note is not finished. So you put it is a professional degree and a doctorate. Then you have the parentheses is not. So I'm wondering for that one, it's combined the previous two columns. So what's this actually it's different from since it's not the parentheses is not finished.
Yes, that's a great question. I think I did some combine. Yeah, I did some combination in that group, and I should have separate them or pick one of them to present. But the story is still there, right?
So for last one is a professional degree and
doctorate.
But the left the column next to this one is also doctor degree. What's
so I think I combined those.
Oh,
but as you see, the last three columns are showing the same pattern. Oh,
okay. But
the gray bars are in both three groups are higher than the green bars. That's Yes, I should pick one, but not three of them to show. You're right.
Yeah, and also when you combine, it's actually less than not combined. This one.
Yeah, I must because we have two waves in this data.
Oh, okay.
And the data were not collected using exactly the same groups. So there's some weird combination there. It's not a straightforward summary.
Okay, I see. So then the other question is I found it very interesting. You are showing like the dual physician marriage by birth cohort. So for that chart, it's very interesting actually to see the females percentage is pretty stable, but the males actually is a dramatic decrease. I wondering this is related to like the gender share by this birth cohort for this physician occupation. So which means it's actually when we look at the age increase, actually the percentage of male is decreased. That's part of reasons or
no, I would say the story is for women physician, for every 10 women physician of all time, 3 of the 10 are married to their colleagues. That's so men physicians have always been a good choice for women physicians to marry. But when you look the other way, in the many years ago, for the older cohorts, there weren't many women physicians to date or to choose from for the men physicians, and that's why this percentage is percent married physicians in dual physician couple. So that's the percentage. So that's why the older men physicians have a lower rate of being married to other physicians.
Oh, okay. So which means you explain is kind of opposite. So which means actually it's the female physicians share decrease by age.
Share decrease by age. You can say that too. Yeah.
Wow,
because
okay.
the share, it has been increasing drastically over time. So for the physicians who are in their 70s, when they were choosing partners, that the gender composition was very imbalanced.
Yeah, that makes sense. So it's a kind of just now you're showing another table is kind of some woman has higher like quit or in change to part-time. So for the extended time. Yeah, that makes sense. So the other is I found that it's also the other findings you have for this same both physicians is actually it's benefit to men than the woman, since the men will be earn more and the woman will be earn less. So I wondering this is also controlled by hours. So because you are showing is actually is I think that number is per year, showing that thousands.
Yeah, it's not a huge number.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm wondering is it controlled by their per hour or not?
It is annual income. It is not per hour income or any. It's not divided by their work time, but the regression controlled for their work hour. Does that make sense? So
Oh, okay.
yeah,
So
so
we
that
don't-
number is just the gap annually. So it's not, I agree, it's not a huge number, but it is significant statistically.
Oh, okay. And also you're controlled by their work hours.
Yes, work hour is controlled. What is not controlled here is specialty,
Oh,
because
yeah.
this is ACS data and they don't have specialty information.
Yeah, that's actually that's very interesting point, because actually I found you're showing another table is showing actually the female and male, they have the specialty group in very different specialty group percentage. So actually I feel that that table is very interesting, because that is showing, it seems the females has the highest percentage, and the men has the highest percentage. Is mainly related to, I feel is mainly related to their social activities or social responsibilities, instead of like this disparity or barriers is not in this table. Is I think the previous table. Yes, this one. So it seems like the female is more like in the child care, or is the older people care, and men here more is like sports. It's more related to like the differences in activities for the gender activities difference, instead of like the barriers we are talking about seems. So
So you're saying it's also driven by the specialty choice is also driven by personal interest. Yeah.
it is personal interest, and also is the gender activity difference. So because women doing more like care and child care and older people care works, and men doing more like here is sports or other relative activities.
Yeah, I think that's where we need some work to break this gender stereotype.
Yeah.
And that might, oh, sorry, I just
Yeah,
want
go
to
ahead,
jump
go
in,
ahead.
'cause
Go ahead.
that, I think you mentioned this the first time around, is that we don't really know that, and it might be the case where these are easier specialties to break into. Like there might be so much competition for surgery residencies, and maybe women just think there's so many candidates for this, I don't want to like try for it and maybe get some lower of my choices for the residency, or it's just so overwhelming and I know I'm going to have kids at some point. Like there might be a lot of other factors deterring them from pursuing these that don't have anything to do with, I just like caring for people, like maybe, probably, I'm sure it's not unrelated.
No, I didn't say that's I'm not I said that it's not a personal interest, but it's related their activity. So no matter this activity is they preferred, or like this child care or older person care in the family, usually it's kind of no matter you are interested or not, sometimes it's become the female's responsibility and the activities.
True.
So
True.
yeah. So
I think the duration of each specialty's residency also is a big factor to consider. If you are 26 and you know that surgery is going to take another 7 years, then I think that's a big deterring factor for women. And Camille, you're on a good guess that people do think about the other factors too, and also debt, like how much debt am I willing to take. There are working papers going on looking at the specialty choice and how to break this gender patterns. and encourage more women into the so-called non-gender conforming specialties. Because we definitely need to work on this, and this is the most, I would say, most effective or quick solutions. Not quick, but if you work on the balance, then you will address a lot of the gender income gap.
Yeah, I agree. So it's definitely if you have more like detailed works about needs specialties and specific specialties. So probably the policies can be more specific or towards certain specialties will be more effective. So the other is you mentioned the COVID, the data table is also interesting to see data table for the COVID.
I just want to mention that we're at time, and I don't
Oh, okay. I think I'm good. So
I'm willing to keep the discussion, but maybe we should
yeah.
stop. So we're not like
Okay, so yeah, so we are currently, it's already out of time, and thank you so much for Dr. Xiaochu who gave a very interesting and great talk. So thank you for your time. So we are looking for the future discussion for any opportunities.
Thanks for listening. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much.
Usually we give a applause to the speaker at the end.
And I'm more than happy to stay and answer questions.
Yeah.
Do you
I
want
to jump off, but I really appreciate it. Want to say that one more time.
Thank you.